The coronavirus is a very important issue right now. I'm recording this March 16th. People are really starting to take notice to it since yesterday marks the first day where there were more cases outside of China than in China. So it's affected almost everyone in the world. And it's crazy. There's been a pattern of infectious diseases, and we knew this was coming. But it's affected my FBLA states. Canceled that. Canceled many sports events. Last week, I went and saw the Broadway show Hamilton, and then just days ago, it closed. I would not be able to see it this week. So during the last 2 days of school, before our 2-week break here in Pennsylvania due to the declared state of emergency from the coronavirus, the COVID-19, my math teacher introduced a couple of concepts that related to the coronavirus. He talked about the exponential growth and how that affects it. It can look like very small numbers, and then it can suddenly jump up to huge numbers that you weren't anticipating. In biology, we learned how viruses transmit. They work by getting into their host and implanting DNA or RNA into the cell to produce more viruses and eventually go through apoptosis and explode, throwing those viruses everywhere to transmit to other cells. Now this really piqued my interest. When math, in this case statistics, collides with science, in this case biology, I am very interested. This is very intriguing. Obviously it's sad, but I think we need to let the public know a little bit more about what's going on behind the scenes. So I decided to do my own research. After all, I do have nearly 2 weeks with nothing else to do. I found a really cool video by Khan Academy titled Estimating Actual COVID-19 Cases, Novel Coronavirus Infections in an Area Based on Deaths. I think it's really cool to see some of these estimates. I mean, they could be way off. I'm not saying that these are perfect numbers, but these are the best numbers that I've seen. So, confirmed right now, we have 174,995 cases. The actual number of cases, we don't really know because the amount of testing has been pretty much insufficient. Now, this is going to be based on the amount of deaths. We have 69 here in the US, 6,704 in the world. Now, we're going to assume a 1% mortality rate. And the time from infection to death, that's going to be 20 days. That's made up of 5 days from infection and symptoms, plus 15 days from symptoms to death. It is assumed that the doubling rate is about 5 days. That's about 14.87% growth per day, made up of how many people each infected individual comes into contact with and the chances of transmission. Government agencies, businesses, everyone is trying to lower those. If we can lower this, we can really make it a lot smaller. Now, the video used an example where there was one death in an area, in a city or whatever. From this, he gauged that there were 100 people infected 20 days ago. So we get that number up here from the 20 days. So down here is about 100 cases. Then 5 days later, he doubled it. So every 5 days, he doubles it. This was so there was a death here. Out of the 100 people that got it, he was the 1% that actually died. And now here, we see 200, it's doubled. Doubles again. 400. 800. And that barely fits on here. We got 1,600 cases for every death. Using hindsight, China has been able to better understand the outbreak. However, this only got me to thinking. If this is only one death, 1,600, how many people do we actually have infected in the US that has 69 deaths? So I went on to the Johns Hopkins Center of Systems, Science, Engineering, Database, and Map. There are about 69 deaths in the US, I've mentioned that, meaning that there are approximately, well, you can also use a shortcut using this method by multiplying it by 1,600 for every one death 1,600 cases. And you can see there's 110,400 cases. So I'm going to write that here. Estimated. This is surprising since there are 174,995 cases confirmed. And now this is what we think could be just in the US. That's the world. This is just in the US. And now let's go to the world. The time that I'm videoing this, on March 16th, 2020, there are 6,706 deaths worldwide. We have that number right here. That there are about 10,729,600 cases worldwide. That's a very extensive number, but many of them don't even know that they're carrying the virus. This makes it an epidemic since many of them will continue throughout their normal lives, transmitting the virus to more and more people. However, sadly, assuming a 1% mortality rate, 107,296 people might die. And that's a crazy number. We have to limit this thing. And if an exponential or even a logistic curve, right, we can see this exponential curve right here. And even if it's a logistic, which it has to be, it'll go up and then curve out. This could be worst case scenario if this is the total population. Health officials, government agencies, and businesses have been able to aid in reducing the amount affected, though, and should be commended. This action will affect the aforementioned assumptions because they can get these numbers down and overall get all the numbers down. But let's assume something else. Let's assume it's not a 1% mortality rate. Let's use the Johns Hopkins number, which is approximately 3.83%. I believe this is skewed because this is only based on the confirmed deaths. We know the actual deaths. We don't really know the cases. Now this would drop the upwards of 10 million figure down to 2,801,462 cases. Only about 3 million. That way drops it down. This is why Ebola did not have as many cases, because it had a much higher mortality rate, which dropped the amount of people affected. Now, I don't believe that numbers will really reach numbers like this, and I believe the estimate is a little high because it's skewed by underlying conditions, elderly, but it is entirely possible. This is about 0.138% of the population, this 10 million number. But I do believe we should continue to test to be sure. However, I think that there are many more people with the virus than we know of. But there is some good news. China has slowed the virus, and it will likely top out at 90,000 or 100,000 in their country because of the action that they took. But they took very drastic action, and many are saying that that won't happen in the US. Also, already about 44.4% of the confirmed cases have recovered. That's about 77,658 people. I'm confident that humanity can get over this virus, get this virus under control. Now make this video viral.